Week 2 of the NFL season is now underway. As we saw last night, the Green Bay Packers defeat the Washington Commanders. And with that game brings some things to attention, some major concerns for the Commanders. And on the other hand, it really starts to make the Packers look really good. Starting with the Packers since they won. The Packers look like one of the most well-rounded teams in the NFL. I would say that what's interesting is the addition of Micah Parsons really means that they finally have this upper echelon tier player, like probably a top 10 player in the league if you think about it, regardless of position. And that's interesting because they haven't really been in that spot since Aaron Rodgers was in his MVP season almost 4 years ago. So getting a guy back of that caliber is going to be really interesting to see how that plays out for them, because I feel like their ceiling the last few years has been limited just because of the fact that their best players on their team aren't like the other best players in the NFL. Thinking your Josh Allens, your Lamar Jacksons, your Patrick Mahomes, your Joe Burrows, or even guys at other positions like Derrick Henry or Saquon Barkley. Now they've got one of those guys. So the question becomes, for me at least, is he's on the defensive side of the ball. So can he really make an impact when you go further down the stretch to allow this team to really be a strong Super Bowl contender in the NFC? And I think the overall roster, with how it's constructed, as well as Matt LaFleur coaching the team, really gives this team a very high floor. And that question is, where that elite talent that they acquired, how much is he able to push them over the top to potentially become a real Super Bowl contender? Because I think before they got him and before the season in general, I would have said that I expected the Packers to be pretty good, but I don't know, just because of how strong the NFC North was looking before the season. I wouldn't have known how to look at them when it comes playoff time. They would get pretty beat up in the regular season is probably what my expectation would have been. And then once you get to the playoffs, that really, that type of them being beaten down at that point from that tough divisional slate, I just don't think that they would have been able to take the next step and get to the conference championship game or even the Super Bowl. The Parsons acquisition really changes things, because I think it gives them that high-end player that most teams need to be able to win a Super Bowl. I don't know. I would have to venture to guess that looking across, say, the last 10 to 20 years, looking for a roster that has won the Super Bowl without a top 10 player of some sorts at some position, just a really well-balanced roster, would be unlikely. And I think it gives them a chance. Not only that, but since I referenced the NFC North, I think the other important thing to say after watching the game last night is that I really feel the Packers have to be the favorite in the NFC North after that. So congrats to the Packers. They look great. They're 2-0. Now they get extended rest because they played on a Thursday night. Let's see how that goes. And we'll have to see how they travel, because they did start their first 2 games at home this year, which obviously helps. And they were in big-time spots, and they delivered. On the other side of things, for the Washington Commanders, I think what's been interesting for me, just looking at football as a whole, college as well as the NFL, is seeing a lot of players that had a lot of first-year success really slowing down to start the season. Now, we've gotten a bigger sample size with college football so far, so I'm thinking Sam Levitt, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams to start the year, really not living up to the hype that they got because they were such good freshmen. And the same thing for Jaden Daniels is interesting because he hasn't looked good in the first 2 weeks of the season. But just from watching the portions of the games that I've seen, it really seems like Jaden Daniels is not hurt by his own ability. His own ability still looks very good. He still looks very good by himself. I would say the interesting thing comes in when you talk about the Deebo Samuel acquisition. Me, a few years back, I would have probably told you that Deebo Samuel was one of, if not my favorite players in the league. And his play style is still one that I absolutely adore. But the thing is, with this team, just watching them in the first 2 weeks, oh my goodness, it feels like their separation is terrible. It feels like Nick Saban going against this defense would have a field day. Just line up in man coverage across the board and say, who can beat us? I don't think any of your receivers can beat us. I don't think any of them can separate. I don't think draft picks like McCaffrey have helped that, because I think that was an overvalued pick in terms of just looking at the name and being like, oh, his brother's so talented. I didn't love that pick, especially how early it was. And that's one of their relatively high on the depth chart receivers. You look at Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel, not known as a separator, but more so what he can do with the ball once you get it in his hands. And that's a great role for him. But really, with Terry McLaurin missing significant time at the beginning of the year, coming back, he needs to be that elite separator for this team, because that's really held them back from performing at their highest level in these first 2 weeks, and it has not looked good. I mean, if a team went man coverage across the board and they were running 11 personnel, the Commanders, it's crazy to think that the guy I would trust the second most is a guy that's halfway through his 30s at the tight end position in Zach Ertz. He's the guy that I would think is second most likely to separate out of their weapons on the field, right behind McLaurin. The other guys aren't separators, and it just really hurt them. Either that, or they have to change up what the offense is. We still know Cliff Kingsbury loves his screen game, and if he can get his screen game going, then that will give them a different opportunity to not have to create as much separation. But they haven't got it going in the first 2 weeks of the season. The run game hasn't been terribly impressive. And you don't want to have to do this, but early in the season, if you can't separate, you may even have to mix in more of the quarterback run game to really give yourself a better chance. Because right now they're 1-1, but they're only 1-1 because of the fact that they had the Giants week 1. And the Giants roster right now, especially with Russell Wilson as the starting quarterback, is not in any position to want to compete with any quality teams in the NFL. And with the Washington Commanders being in the NFC Championship game last year, they certainly would expect themselves to be a competent team playing for perhaps even the NFC title this year. Maybe even a Super Bowl with how well last season went as Jaden Daniels as a rookie. And I don't really think there's anything to look down upon with their defense. Their defense has actually been outstanding. Like, almost I don't know if you could ask for anything better from their defense. I mean, Green Bay did score a decent amount of points against them, but that Green Bay team looks really good. The defense looks outstanding. You love what they've allowed, but I can't believe I'm saying it after the year that Jaden Daniels had as a rookie, but the offense needs to get better. It's just, I don't believe that it's Jaden Daniels' fault. I think it's completely up to receivers separating or reimagining what they're going to do most of the time, because I think that really reared its ugly head in the first 2 weeks of the season. So with that, I can go back to week 1 a little bit, since we just had the Thursday night game last night. I can talk about how I see some of these teams sitting for the rest of the league. Starting off with Tampa Bay and Atlanta, having this game on Sunday felt absolutely disgusting to me. This is just another instance of Tampa Bay having a far superior team, and this hurts me so much because Baker Mayfield has to be one of my favorite players in the NFL by far. I love watching him, but watching his team compete in games is so unbelievably frustrating because it feels like they have so many opportunities to pull away and they just don't, or they just make bad decisions. I just oftentimes just look at what Todd Bowles is doing and shake my head. I don't know. But on the other side, and it's even worse when they're playing the Falcons, because I have really not been impressed with what Raheem Morris is doing on the other sideline. And what's interesting is both these rosters are talented. These two teams are talented, but I just feel like they're hurt so much in the coaching regard. I don't feel like either of these teams can be real competitors in the NFC because of the decisions their coaches make on a consistent basis. And the reason that game was so wild at the end and just felt so weird. I mean, really, I didn't time it out, but it felt like the Falcons on their second to last possession before Igbuka scores the last touchdown of the game. It was just wild to watch a game where it felt like the Atlanta Falcons had the ball for like what felt like a real life half hour inside the Tampa Bay 5-yard line, and it took that long to score, and then they took like 30 minutes to score inside the Atlanta 5, and then it took like 5 minutes of real time for the Buccaneers to walk back down the field and score again to a rookie receiver who looks really promising. So all the roster for Tampa Bay, props to them. They look good. Coaching, man, Bulls. I mean, I really want you to do something better to impress me because it's not impressive. And on the other hand, I look at Raheem Morris too for the Falcons, and I feel like he's holding them back as well. I just feel like the coaching decisions in Atlanta have been really poor since Dan Quinn departed, and that's where I'm at with the team. I think that roster is pretty talented too. I'd say the Buccaneers roster is a little bit more talented than Atlanta's, but both of these teams have real concerns when it comes to coaching. Cincinnati and Cleveland. So Cincinnati started slow again, but they did pull it out against Cleveland, but it was because of pure luck, because of missed kicks by the Cleveland kicker. I don't really know what to say with this because this theme has been so consistent with Cincinnati and Cleveland that it doesn't feel like anything really stuck out in terms of it being different from what the expectation should be. If the Browns pulled off this win, it would be huge for them to start the season because I'm not expecting much out of them. It just doesn't feel like there's a tremendous upside with this team. The defense looks strong, but I don't think they have anywhere near enough talent on the offensive side of the ball to compete in this league at all. On the other side, Cincinnati started slow, but for once they started slow and they still came out with a W. Thank the football gods above for allowing you to pull out that win. And I'm not too concerned with it because we've seen this consistently, and they'll probably turn it on in the second half of the year. They'll get going and they'll be just fine. But when it ends up as a 1-0 in the win column, that's huge. Indianapolis and Miami. I'm sorry, Indianapolis. Good job. Great job to you guys for what you did. I'm not going to discount it. That's still an NFL roster you had to play. You did great. But the storyline here is Miami. It's really unbelievable that everybody talked about in this offseason this feeling that it's just going to finally crash and burn in Miami for Mike McDaniel. And boy, oh boy, did they do absolutely nothing in week one to make that feel different. But Mike McDaniel also feels like the type of guy that's so low-key about everything that he would take a firing in stride completely and just walk off into the sunset, even though it's so opposite to get let go from your job. Las Vegas and New England. Vegas, in the second half was so much better than the first half. The first half was really gross because I didn't like that Vegas was competing with them. I think Vegas is going to be a pretty good team. It's just very difficult to look at the AFC West this year and think that they're going to be a team that really is able to go far because their division's going to beat them up so much. I don't think there's a bad team in that division. Pete Carroll gives them a great floor. He'll inspire confidence in the entire team. And there's a number of guys really looking at the roster construction is very interesting. And I think they're an interesting watch this year because of the upside on the young players on the offensive side of the ball. Because we just think about wide receivers so much in the modern day in terms of your weapons on offense. I know maybe Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry in recent years have kind of maybe turned that so you can start thinking about some other non-quarterbacks as really integral to offenses. But going high on Ashton Genty, who didn't perform well week one, but I have no concerns about that. It's going to come down to blocking to see if they can really start him off strong. He's going to be a very good back in this league. And then possibly already having the best tight end in the NFL as a second-year player for the Raiders really makes this roster construction strange because of the fact that then they have no standout receivers, but they have two such big names at the running back and tight end position, and finally have competency at the quarterback position. For most teams, I would say that I hate the idea of just going to what I would call a middle of the road quarterback for just in general, because it doesn't allow you to have enough upside to actually probably compete for the Super Bowl. This division, on top of this conference, even if the Raiders somehow manage to get the 1 seed in the playoffs, which I know is probably egregious to even bring up, but just thinking about the idea that they could, I can't imagine them going on to win 3 straight playoff games against opponents of that quality because of their quarterback play. But what's very important is realizing in recent years how much this fan base and team in general has really struggled, and raising the floor of this team could really give them an opportunity down the road to find that franchise quarterback, have this great base around them, and they're going to be a team that I continue to watch. And I mean, hey, Geno Smith, you remember what he said in that Seattle game on Monday Night Football when he said, they wrote me off and I didn't write back. So I'm writing him off again right now as just a slightly below elite level quarterback. And if he gets up to that tier, who knows? Maybe the sky's the limit for this team. I don't expect it at this time, but I think as a Raiders fan, you have to be really excited about the fact that the floor has been raised so much about what your expectation for your team should be this season. And I think the second half of the game really illustrated that well. Beyond the first drive, the one drive in the first half they scored a touchdown on, I was just a little concerned with how they were starting off, but they got their footing under them, and I like how they ended the game there in New England. As for New England, I was hoping for a better performance out of them in the first week of the season. It's a very interesting matchup that they got put with week 1, really unfamiliar opponent, 2 teams with new head coaches meeting against each other in that game. It's interesting. I do expect a lot out of Vrabel, though, and I expect them to be a pretty good team just because of him. And I really liked their draft. But even if I really like their draft, that doesn't guarantee anything about these guys coming into the league and immediately making a big impact. So what I would say is I'm not too concerned, but I want to watch this because I wasn't too happy with that week 1 performance. I was expecting more out of them, and it probably seems interesting to say the Raiders end up winning this game by 7, and I say I feel good about them with how they played in the second half, and then me saying that I don't feel as good about New England losing by 7 when I just said I had decent expectations for the Raiders. And the thing with that is the final score was a little bit deceiving. It really felt more like the end score was closer to a 20-10 ball game, and New England tacked on a field goal to make it look a little bit better. Kind of see some box score adjusting in terms of if people just see that score like, oh, okay, New England competed. It didn't feel like they competed in the second half, and I just want to see a little bit more fight in them, hopefully in their next game they play, because I do have confidence that Vrabel's a good coach, and I think they drafted well. I just think in terms of me talking about raising the floor with the Raiders, and the Raiders probably being able to at least compete for a playoff spot, after a 1-game sample size for the Patriots, it doesn't feel great about thinking that they could be a playoff team this year. That still may be a year or even 2 years away, and everybody knows that Drake May is a huge key point in deciding whether or not they're able to move up the NFL hierarchy. Arizona, New Orleans. I've referenced in some of my videos before. I made a joke about the Saints in the NFL schedule is a joke video. Please go check that out if you haven't. I think it's a pretty good video. I know the thumbnail's a little stupid, but it's kind of just, I just wanted that to be the thumbnail. If you really pay attention to it, you'll realize what it's saying. The Saints just are not a good team. This was disappointing to watch for both teams. Let me say, too, interesting things. I mean, I have some strong takes about uniforms that I think a number of people disagree with. The black helmet for the Saints is not a bad look, but I think those putting the logo in the center, just a bunch of tiny versions of it in the middle, and using that as your stripe, I just think that's a terrible look. If you just go solid black helmet, logo on the sides, That would look much better. Then the other thing is realizing the NFL had such a controversy over the color rush a few years ago because of the fact that there was the Bills Jets game where it affected colorblind people. So they really haven't thought about how to reanalyze this. But the thing is, if the home team is going to wear a gold jersey, which I actually like, I love wearing weird colors. I think it's something fun to do for fans. I think people of different ages also really interpret different colors a lot differently. I think the older you get, generally, the more classic feel you want. And I think younger kids especially, a gold jersey like that to a young Saints fan right now, like teenage years, I'm sure it's like, whoa, that's so cool. That's so different, right? So it's just about perspective being different based on where you are in life. And I actually think the look is fun. I just think the big problem with it is you look at a gold jersey. A gold jersey, even though it has a color that is not white, because basically we think about in the NFL, white jerseys versus someone wearing a jersey of any other color than white. And the truth is that gold as a color is closer to a white jersey. And the Cardinals really should have worn either a red jersey or a black jersey for that game because those are their options that aren't white. And I think it would have looked better for television. And I don't think that there would have been any colorblind issues with that because of just the intensity of the colors. I think red would be a darker color or black would be a significantly darker colored jersey than the gold, and there shouldn't be any issues there. But with that being said, like I said, I'm very interested in that look. I would like them to keep it. I would just like the NFL to interpret a gold jersey as a white jersey for the future because it is such a light color, and then have the other team wear a darker jersey. And I think that contrast would actually look better than just assuming that every jersey that has any color that is not white should be considered should mean the opponent should wear a white jersey. Because I don't think that looked very good, even though I'm not against that gold jersey at all. I just think you need to change what the other team wears. In terms of these actual teams, though, Arizona, that's pretty disappointing from Arizona. I think New Orleans is going to be one of the worst teams in the last half decade, probably. There's just not upside on this roster. I mean, it's Chris Olave on the offensive side of the ball, Alvin Kamara are good players, but I just don't think they have any sort of supporting cast at all. They're going to be asked to do way too much, I feel like, in this offense. And I wouldn't necessarily expect them to stay on the field because of how high their usage is. One of the two of them probably, the odds that they have both of them in the game consistently over the whole season are pretty low because of how important they're going to be to the team consistently getting the ball all the time. And the quarterback play is just going to be terrible in terms of having to watch this over 17 games. On the defensive side of the ball, we're talking about past 35, I think now, Demario Davis as your best player, and it's just like I don't know what you love about this roster. And I think Arizona, I wasn't expecting to be a great team, but I was really hoping to see them with Gannon continue to improve and ascend, and I just feel like a 7-point win against New Orleans there, especially with how close it was in the end to New Orleans getting back into it, I'm just really disappointed with both of them, and I don't think there's a ton of upside. Pittsburgh beat the Jets, even though it didn't feel like either of these teams should walk away feeling great. I mean, that Pittsburgh defense, I can't believe that Aaron Rodgers walked into town, and I have to walk away in their first game of the season after they play the Jets with Justin Fields, who just left Pittsburgh, and say, I can't imagine like them playing the Bills or the Ravens after seeing what the Jets just did to them on the offensive side of the ball. The Jets absolutely handed this game away by giving away the ball on the kick return late in the game when it felt like the Steelers were kind of out of it because they couldn't get a stop on defense, and then they get the most timely of timely turnovers ever. So great job to Rodgers. They pull out the win on the road. I don't know if there's a ton to complain about on the offensive side of the ball at all. You worry about Rodgers' health long term with how the game went in terms of watching him get hit and just me sitting there thinking every time he gets hit, like, good God, is he going to get up? but the defense was just so disappointing against an offense that we really don't expect to be high caliber. And the run defense was the worst part of it, which is really concerning for them. So they're 1-0. We all know they always find ways to win more games than they should. They don't go below 500 ever. And it looks like that trend's going to continue because they figured out how to pull this one out without really seemingly deserving it. A lot of stuff had to go their way to get this one, and they did. On the Jets side, it's only a one-game sample. So even though I said Pittsburgh's defense could be terrible, well, geez, the O-lineman blocked the run game up tremendously well for the Jets. So if that continues all season and you can run the quarterback off of the running back run game, there's no telling how high the ceiling is for this Jets team in terms of recalibrating my expectations. I mean, it's hard. It's very hard to watch what Josh Allen did, and we'll get to that. But it's very hard to watch what Josh Allen did last week and come to the conclusion that you would expect anybody to win that division other than the Bills. And with that being said, the Jets, after 1 week, the Jets look like the second best division in the AFC East. So maybe they can compete for the playoffs, because I can't say that was my expectation for them going into the season in terms of talking about raising their ceiling a lot. So I'm talking about the concerns for Pittsburgh and their win and the good stuff for the Jets and their loss. So we'll see how it continues, but the Jets are still going to be a pretty tough spot because they are most likely, not guaranteed. You see this sign back here, Buffalo Bills fan. So not trying to be biased, I would just say there's a higher percentage chance that the Bills win this game this weekend than the Jets win it. So if they start 0-2, not predicting the Bills to win, just saying a higher percentage chance. If they start 0-2, that's a tough hole to climb out of, even though I like how they started their season. So we'll see how it continues for them. But right now, I see them as the second best team in the AFC East. And I definitely wasn't sure of that going into it. I probably would have given the nod to the Patriots before the season. So good trend for the Jets. Let's see if it can continue, even though they'll probably start 0-2. Probably. Washington beat New York 21-6 last week. Like I said, just talked about the Thursday night game for Washington. Obviously, defense wins for them. They need to figure stuff out on offense. On the Giants side of things, this just feels, I don't know. It feels insane to me to protect a rookie quarterback by choosing to not play him. I hate that idea. I don't know why we have to eliminate ourselves from playoff contention before we put a rookie quarterback into the game. Russell Wilson is just not it. I mean, I want to talk about a number of things for all these teams. It's insane to me that even a vet minimum contract is given out to Russell Wilson each year since the first year with the Denver Broncos, because the first year with the Denver Broncos was so bad. Going to a game in person to watch that team with him as the starting quarterback, it was obvious then. It was like, this guy can't play anymore. He just, whatever it was that made him special, I don't know what I specifically want to point to. It's not there. And he keeps getting more contracts and keeps getting to play. And with how NFL teams operate, it seems like he will have a job the next 4 years at least, even though he has no desire to be a backup at all. Somehow people will throw him around and find him a way into a starting role when he absolutely doesn't deserve it. Too many teams in the NFL are not interested in winning the Super Bowl. And I know a team with where the Giants have been in recent years can't expect themselves to compete for the Super Bowl now. But I can tell you one way that you will guarantee you will not compete for the Super Bowl this year. We'll take it from a 0% chance to a 0.1% chance, 1 in 1,000 chance that the Giants win the Super Bowl this season. And that's by starting Jackson Dart. You have no shot of winning the Super Bowl with Russell Wilson playing quarterback for you this season. And that's why it just doesn't make any sense to me why he would be playing. Because The upside of a rookie quarterback like Jackson Dart could be Jaden Daniels. We have no idea how good it could be. But we know the ceiling of Russell Wilson at this point. It's not going to go back to 2015. It's not right now. So, I don't know, Dable. Protect Jackson Dart's confidence. But honestly, I think it's so much more up to coaching staffs than anything else to inspire confidence in players. I talked about this in the Chiefs-Chargers recap last week, and it's so true. Jim Harbaugh, I don't think game situations or even play calling on either side of the ball is something that he is good at. Really, it's not impressive whatsoever for him. He inspires so much confidence in his players. It is unbelievable. And that's how he turns these teams around. You would think that that's more important at the college level with younger guys. But it's true at the NFL level too. He shows it every time he gets a job with a team and how quickly they start to compete. He inspires confidence so quickly. So if you are worried about Jackson Dart losing his confidence from playing tough teams early in the season, starting over Russell Wilson, realize that that is on you as a coaching staff to make sure he stays confident even if he plays these difficult teams and struggles. And tell him, you are young. You are a good player. Keep saying that to him no matter how hard the first, say, 6 weeks of the season are. Say that to him and say, this will make you a better player in the future. We have full confidence in you. And it may do wonders. Don't protect him because you have no upside in what you're doing. Your strategy has no upside at all. At all. Jacksonville and Carolina. The rain delay in this really made it feel weird. It felt like the Panthers did not come out to play whatsoever once the rain delay happened. It felt like they were trying to stick in it before that, but Jacksonville being the home team with the rain delay, it probably was just really, they weren't in a good spot before the rain delay. The rain delay probably always makes the road team just more annoyed that they're on the road, out of town for even longer because of the rain delay. It's not too surprising to see Jacksonville pull away in this game. Would have said that I expected Jacksonville to win this before the game as well, but I'll be very interested to see where these teams go from here. It's a good showing for Jacksonville in week 1, and I wouldn't take it too seriously if you're a Carolina fan, because of the fact that rain delay probably helped contribute to making things look like it got a little bit out of hand with that 16-point margin of defeat. So we'll see how they continue. I don't want to rag or praise either of those two teams too much. I just think that's where they are. Let's get a larger sample for them. Then we're finally into the 4 o'clock games at that point. Denver 20, Tennessee 12. Seeing a 12 on the scoreboard is always weird. I have to say, watching Cam Ward again, since he was at Washington State, I've been impressed with this guy. And I knew whatever school he transferred to ahead of going to Miami was going to see a huge uptick in terms of just what their ceiling was. And he really raised it for that Miami program. That Miami program was kind of middle of the road, and they became one of the best teams in the ACC after he joined. And I think the traits that allow him to do that are I saw them on display in week 1 in the NFL. And everybody's praising this Denver defense for being one of the best in the league. I think that 8-point game, a 1-score game for Cam Ward in week 1 is a huge accomplishment against that defense. So Titans, in terms of trend, absolutely love that. Let's keep it going. Let's see if you can build momentum throughout the season. Definitely don't think you're going to compete for a playoff spot this year, but I don't think you're going to get into the playoffs this year. You could get close, though, if you really trend in the right direction, and I would really be optimistic about looking at next season and beyond. just enjoy the development for now you see on a week-to-week basis. And I think that'll make this season enjoyable because of the fact that you were been on a little bit of a downtrend there as a Titans fan. Enjoy that development, and before you know it, you may have one of those top-tier QBs in the NFL because I really liked what I saw so far. From the Denver perspective on this is a disappointing showing, but you got out of it with a win, and I think that's all you really want. I would say, just with talking about the complexities of the Denver Broncos offense in terms of verbiage and all the things that Sean Payton puts on the plate of a player, maybe it's just a lot to expect a player to come out and perform at an extremely high level week one of the NFL season in Bo Nix. And just to do that on a consistent basis in general, but especially week one with, I'm sure, everything Sean Payton was trying to make sure they had in for the game. They still got the win. That's the most important part. I'm not selling my Bo Nix stock. I'm not too concerned about it yet for the Broncos, but we'll see how it develops. San Francisco at Seattle. This result surprised me only because I just expected at least one team to get to 20 points in this game. I can't say this is probably the game I focused on the least last week. I know a lot of people were very interested in seeing how that game went, but just the one thing that I would say I could take away from the game, because like I said, this is the one that I watched the least, is I was a lot more optimistic in terms of how Sam Darnold would look in his first performance, but maybe that's solid getting back with the 49ers defense and really giving them that edge back, and we'll see that the 49ers offense the 49ers defense is going to look really good this season. If that's the case, maybe I don't have to be too worried about Sam Darnold. But right now, after 1 week of the season, it really looks like Sam Darnold may be a significant downgrade from Geno Smith. So that's what I'm keeping my eye on. I don't want to say anything too declarative because, like I said, this is the game I watched the least of last week. But that's where I'm sitting with Seattle. San Francisco, on the other hand, a road divisional win in week one of the season. One of the toughest places to play. Coming back with a roster that's really all over the place in terms of people probably being able to see them on the high end being one of the best teams in the NFC to possibly being the worst. A lot of that comes down to injury concern. This is a huge win for them in the first week of the season, and you have to be really happy with it. And I also just think their early round picks from 2 years ago in Renardo Green and Ricky Pearsall are going to be really good players in this league for the next half decade at least. So confidence is inspired in that in terms of me talking about the other guys that are getting kind of older, thinking about guys like Kittle and McCaffrey who have dealt with a few more injuries recently. And stock up on the 49ers after seeing a nice gutsy performance in the first week of the season. Green Bay and Detroit. I just talked about how great I think Green Bay is. Looking at this from the Detroit perspective, I'd be very concerned if I was Detroit. I know Green Bay is good. Now we've seen 2 samples of how good Green Bay is, but I don't think that was as much the Green Bay defense in week 2 as it was the lack of separation ability with the Washington offense. I was very disappointed in Detroit. Dan Campbell may have been right 2 years ago when he said that this may have been our only opportunity to get to the Super Bowl when they blew that one. They blew the NFC Championship game to allow the 49ers to go to the Super Bowl instead. He may have been right. They lost their coordinators. That was really uninspiring for week 1. You would think that you should have a relatively clean bill of health for your roster. Your roster shouldn't be completely ravaged. You should have most of your players available. Their offense is supposed to be the thing that makes them such an impressive team. They don't get the equivalent of 2 touchdowns on the scoreboard even. And it just all around, it didn't look like the vibe was the same. This was concerning. We're not talking about Dan Campbell's not going to allow the culture to degrade into something like what we expect Miami to become this year. But with where they're sitting, that was really disappointing. And that performance, just in terms of feeling, not what the expectation actually should be in like an odds book or something. In an odds book, this team should still be expected to win at least 10 games, I would say, this year, even in a tough division like the NFC North, because they still have a lot of talent on that roster. But the feeling that I had watching that game and seeing those coaches not be a part of that team anymore, it was like the energy had been sucked out of the team. And the energy for a week 1 game felt more like a 6-win team than an 11-win team to me. And that was really concerning. It's week 1, like I said. It doesn't feel like there should have been any reason for them to not have a significant amount of energy to come out for week 1. And I didn't like what I saw. And actually, I said the game I saw the least of was San Francisco-Seattle. I really don't know if I saw anything from the Rams and Texans. I mean, it actually was like nothing. So I shouldn't comment too heavily on those. I just have to say, looking at the final score for both teams, surprised at the point totals. So that could be defense, could be offense, but I didn't watch any of it, so I'm not going to say anything on that. We'll just have to keep track of how those offenses and defenses trend throughout the season, whether those defenses will be great. Thinking about the talent on both sides of those on the ball, the talent on the defensive side of the ball for the Rams looks tremendous, and on the other hand, the coaching on the defensive side of the ball for the Texans looks great. So let's just optimistically say that we'll give credit to both defenses in this matchup. And I would still expect both of these teams to be pretty solid teams in the NFL this year. Buffalo and Baltimore. So, as I said, you see my bias right here in that I'm a Bills fan. The main takeaway from this has to be, as a Bills fan, because I was thinking about coming on here and talking about this game eventually. Basically, it felt like the majority of the game just like with things that I was going to complain about when they lost. And the fact that they won was an unbelievably amazing feeling because of how much we just barely were able to take it from them. I mean, we pushed it all the way to the brink in terms of having the opportunity to win it. And we made just enough of the plays to be able to claw it out of their hands. But the most important takeaway, because the truth is I'm going to nitpick both of these teams. I'm going to nitpick a ton about the Bills. I'm going to nitpick a ton about the Ravens in a second. But they're probably the 2 best teams in the AFC right now. And even one of them had to win, and one of them had to lose this first game of the season because I'm assuming no ties. There were no ties this week. So one of them had to win, one of them had to lose. And they're going to be the 2 best teams in the AFC. But for how this plays out for Buffalo, it is unbelievably amazing thinking about the thing that they haven't been able to do over these years with Allen so far. And the thing as a Bills fan that frustrates me is that Sean McDermott has continued to preach playoff caliber, which makes sense. The NFL is very tough. You can't expect perfection. I mean, nobody's done it for, past 40 years now since the Dolphins did it. And setting the false expectation that you expect perfection is probably a bad thing, especially with the regular season being 17 games now. And at a minimum, you're going to need to play 20 games and win all of them to be perfect. So you can't expect that. So setting the expectation at the playoffs for a number of teams, just as the minimum goal, is a good goal. But this team has the NFL MVP, and after 1 week, he would probably win the award again. But it's obviously not a 1-week award. So we have a lot of games to play, so we'll see how it goes. But you have the MVP. The expectation should not be playoffs, and it shouldn't be to win every game either. It's got to be in between there. And they've failed to get the 1 seed in the AFC since they've had Josh Allen. And I mean, they probably haven't been the 1 seed in over maybe about 30 years now, at best 25 years. That really should be what McDermott's preaching. everything McDermott says to the team should be about trying to get the number 1 seed. You can fail a few times. You could go 15-2, 14-3 probably even still gets you the 1 seed, because it feels like there's a little bit more competitive balance in the AFC now. Those top quarterbacks are still great, but it feels like the other rosters have started to catch up, or at least manipulate their teams in ways that should allow them to catch more of those top dogs off guard and win some games that they shouldn't. Top dogs talking about the Chiefs, the Bills, and the Ravens, at least, who consistently have been up there. And looking at the standings, the 5 most important teams to the Bills in terms of talking about recent history, just as well as the teams that are always important. The Bills are now 1-0. The Patriots are 0-1. The Dolphins are 0-1. The Jets are 0-1. And arguably, even more importantly than just winning their division and actually seeding themselves well in terms of the division winners, the Chiefs are 0-1. And because of their opponent, the Ravens are 0-1. And those have been the teams that have been ahead of them for the 1 seed. I don't think in this league you can undersell the importance of the 1 seed, because of the fact that in recent years, not only does it mean you have no opportunity for anybody to get hurt for 1 week, but since we reseed and you are guaranteed to play the worst remaining team in the divisional round, if you are the 1 seed, let's think about it. Those 3 guys at the tops, rosters as well as quarterbacks, the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Bills. If those teams are 1, 2, 3 in the playoffs, and that's pretty much what it's been in recent years, it's been those 3 teams pretty much, then if you're the 1 seed, not only do you not have to play a wild card game, but you're going to play a significantly, at least, less experienced team in the divisional round, no matter who it is, if the other 2 of the 3 are the 2 and the 3 seed. The 1 seed is unbelievably important, and that's what people need to focus on for this game specifically, because the Bills have an advantage over all the consistent powers in the AFC now. It's not to say the Chargers couldn't surprise, the Broncos couldn't surprise, the Bengals couldn't kind of surprise, only because we know they struggle early season, and it's just usually difficult to catch up to the Ravens in terms of wins to actually overtake the whole division. You still expect the Bengals to be a playoff team. I just don't know if we expect them to ever compete for the 1 seed because of this strange, consistent struggle they've had with these opening games of the season. But that's the thing that can't be understated from this game, is the Bills have the opportunity to finally get that 1 seed, and that's huge because you don't have to play anybody in the wild card. You'd expect them to win in the divisional round, and then it's a 1-game series against one other team to go to the Super Bowl. And with the MVP, it's hard to think you don't have, at worst, a 50-50 chance in any game you play against any team. I think the Ravens, one of the interesting things that's happened with the Ravens in melting down in these late game situations is that I look at the stats at the end of the game and I see Derrick Henry averaging almost 10 yards a carry. And what makes this so interesting is that Derrick Henry is the reason that they lost the game at the end. I mean, it really is. If he doesn't put the ball on the ground, the odds that the Bills are going to, I mean, here's the real important part. Win that game in regulation are almost zero, because I think the Bills had a much better chance to pull off that win because of their lack of success on 2-point conversions, which allowed the Ravens. It didn't allow the Ravens to have the opportunity to attack them in a tie game. They had to still play conservatively. At least that's how Harbaugh wanted to. Then they could have went for it on 4th down. But my thing is, going back to Derrick Henry, with how the game played out and looking at it from a kind of negative perspective, because it felt like he handed the Bills the opportunity, just to be honest, to get back into this game. he averaged almost 10 yards a carry. And just thinking about a thing related to the NBA with load management and looking at how many carries an over 30-year-old running back gets in the NFL, their roster is so good that I would say at least 2/3 of the games that the Ravens play would be insignificantly affected if Derrick Henry just sat out the games. So if you're trying to keep him at like a 19 carry a game guy, and that's why he ends up with 19 carries against the Bills, I would say instead of averaging that out over every game of the season, when there's teams you just know you're better than, and odds are you're going to beat them with or without him, run Derrick Henry like the equivalent of not at all in those games against those weaker opponents, because you may have the best roster in the NFL, and go into the games where you're playing teams like the Bills, the most important games, and you're just watching Derrick Henry. Basically, if he gets 3 yards up the field as a Bills fan, it's like, oh my God, I'm terrified because he may score if he got 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, because that means somebody much smaller than him has to make a tackle. And whether he runs them over, pushes them aside, or makes a cut around them, or runs past them, it's terrifying. So in those games, let him carry the ball, the equivalent of an early 2000s running back, and hand him the ball 40 times in those games. And just don't play him against the bad teams. I'd be very interested to see what that strategy yields. Because if he's averaging 10 yards a carry, I bet he could still average 7 or 8 yards a carry if you handed him the ball 40 times. If you did that the whole game, I'd just be interested to see the result. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but they've lost the last 2 to the Bills. And if they did that, it would really limit the opportunity for negative plays, because yeah, he fumbled in this last game, but he rarely does that. And the upside with him is just insane. And in these games, I'd really like to see what they could do if they would go increased workload on him. And it's interesting because they have arguably one of the best quarterbacks ever and best running backs ever in the backfield. I think especially against the Bills, but other teams in general, if they were willing to lean into the run game completely against these teams and really save Derrick Henry for those big games and really just feed him the ball the entire time, I think it could potentially be the key that gets them over the hump of losing these games in such heartbreaking fashion. Because they, even worse than the Bills, have really... they haven't even had one really impressive playoff win. They've had games that they're expected to win by large margins, and they've won those in the playoffs. But when they've played a game and it's expected to be close at the end, they haven't been able to pull it out in the playoffs. And I think it means you have to change something about the style of how you play it. And I think that could be it. But they haven't done it to this point. They haven't been willing to hand Derrick Henry the ball that many times in a game and change his carries from just averaging it each game to saving him for the big games. So I wouldn't expect them to do it now. From the Buffalo side of things, how is our head coach a defensive head coach? We allowed 40 in week 1. I know that team's great. I just got to be honest. This is the National Football League. The most I can say, like legitimately, if you have the best offense ever, is an acceptable amount of points to give up in a game, is 35. If somebody puts up 35 points on you in a game and it's the best offense ever, I would say that's a success. It just needs to be better coaching on the defensive side of the ball. We need to get everything cleaned up. And but I mean, one of the main issues with that is that we haven't really had... It's been pretty hit or miss on a number of players that we've got on the defensive side of the ball. There's been some really weird, like, consistent hits in terms of 6th round corners and then 3rd round linebackers, but then our 1st round defensive picks don't live up to the billing. But now Ed Oliver is looking great but it took 5 years for him to get to this point, or even longer than that now. It's year 6 or 7 for him. He looks great now, but it's just the development timeline was pretty slow. So it's like looking at the guys we invest highly in, may take them time to develop, and it's just really all over the place with the defense. I mean, and then on the offensive side of the ball, I talked to my friends after the game, and I just think that the big thing that really allowed the Bills to fall behind in this game, beyond just not being able to stop the Ravens, is that the Bills had 2 3-and-out possessions in this game. And once again, James Cook is a great player. Glad that we re-signed him. But the MVP was the MVP last year for a reason. So having our 2 possessions that we go 3-and-out on, and this is the difference in these games against the best opponents. Like, these 2 possessions very well could have been the reason that we lost the game. And just giving up these possessions is insane to me. Our 2 possessions where we went 3-and-out were 3 consecutive runs to James Cook. Not saying I dislike giving James Cook the ball. It's just very tough to have the NFL MVP on your team and not have him impact a drive at all. And he didn't impact the drive at all on that one. Clearly, he just handed the ball off 3 times, and then we punted. And on another drive, the other time, he really didn't affect the drive. He did pass on this drive, but the 3 play calls were rocket screen, and another run to James Cook. And regardless of who your quarterback is, Josh Allen or anybody else, the rocket screen at the NFL level is expected to be thrown accurately no matter who your quarterback is. So having 2 sets of plays where we go 3-and-out, and we don't allow the NFL MVP to have any impact on those possessions, and we just give the ball back to another great team, is really bad play calling in terms of allowing that special player to be special. There was no opportunity for our special player to be special in those possessions. And I don't want to see possessions the rest of the season that don't give him at least 1 play a series, assuming he doesn't miss any plays, to make a special play if we're going to end up punting the ball anyways. Monday night, Minnesota pulls it out against Chicago. And this game could not have flipped on its head more. I thought when they got to the pick 6, it really looked like the Bears were rolling after the pick 6. But then it cuts to Kevin O'Connell on the sideline with J.J. McCarthy. And it's just like, oh, talking about belief again. Kevin O'Connell believes in J.J. McCarthy. And not only does he believe in J.J. McCarthy, J.J. McCarthy looked like he was completely unfazed by throwing that pick 6. Not only did he look unfazed in the moment, but I was like, oh, they're still going to have a chance. They're not going to give up on this. They went down and they ended up with a 2-score lead late in the 4th quarter before the Bears cut it back to 1 possession. And you just got to admire the resiliency. That was amazing to see in the first game of the season. I think Kevin O'Connell realized late in that game that he was babying him a little bit too much in the first half, and he was going way too dink or dunk, way too check down, and he actually let him release the ball down the field a few times in the second half, and that was huge in allowing them to get back in this game, come back, and win. Really interested to see where Minnesota goes from here, but that resiliency was A+ from them. And J.J. McCarthy in general, that dude, I just really like that dude. I don't know what else to say. Chicago on the other side. It's so interesting to watch Caleb Williams play because he runs towards the sideline, and some of these throws that he throws like a shortstop in baseball are some of the most physically impressive throws I've seen in my entire life. This guy is going to be able to put it together, but absolutely, like I said, you need to inspire confidence in people. He has been beaten the crap out of, basically, even since his senior year at USC. People have just been picking on him at every chance they get. And Ben Johnson, you need to make sure you continue to tell him how good he is and how good he will become. Because he's got the talent. The key is just to make sure that he does not lose his confidence. When these players lose their confidence, it's over. A few years ago, I was talking about Anthony Richardson. His upside is insane, but the way that the fans talked about him feels like it's finally infected his own head. And we could get a Geno Smith type of resurgence for Anthony Richardson, but I don't think that we can expect Daniel Jones to go out of a game anytime soon for the Colts and Anthony Richardson to check in and be able to quickly brush that monkey off his back and actually be able to play at the high level that he could given his athletic ability. And I don't think his coaches protected him from that. I don't think the coaches held him up and said, no, you're a good player. They did the opposite. I actually saw them beat him down with the media, not take his side on things. And if they don't do this correctly with Caleb Williams, that talent can go to waste very quickly if you do not support guys properly. And I just think that's very important to say because, like I said, he still makes throws that are more impressive to me than a number of throws that really, they're the type of throws that we expect out of Patrick Mahomes with the arm angles and stuff, but they come out of his hand with even more velocity than Mahomes ever did. It's incredibly impressive what he does, and I don't want that to end up wasted because he doesn't have confidence in himself, because he absolutely should. We'll see where it goes, though, because, like I said, he's been beat to crap, and there's no guarantee that the coaches hold him up and make him feel good. So I think that's the key for the Bears. Beyond that, there's other things to talk about with the Bears, but that is so unbelievably important that I think that's just where I've got to leave it. And if you enjoyed this, had no idea that I would be going a full hour on all these games, but I guess that's the NFL. With how close games are, it's really something to be able to talk about all these teams again. It's so nice to have both college football and the NFL back finally, and being able to say that is just absolutely wonderful. So if you enjoyed listening to this, thank you for checking in based on me probably framing this video around reacting to the Thursday night games, but as well as expectations for everybody for the rest of the season from week 1. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, please subscribe because you stayed on this video for an hour and 3 minutes of content to this point. So thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
So, if you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching.
2020 president candidate.